Good morning, everyone, and welcome to chapel. I'm honored to be your speaker today. I've been pondering our theme this year. This is my story, times of belonging and not belonging. And I realize that there are times in my life when I'm not sure whether I fit in or not. Or sometimes I feel like I have one foot in and one foot out of a community. So I want to tell a couple of stories from my life. And I'd like to start with sharing a Quaker saying that some of my colleagues learned along with me in class. An enemy is someone whose story you have not heard. Again, an enemy is someone whose story you have not heard. So this morning I'd like to share 3 stories with you. Perhaps it will help you understand me better, and maybe you can find some connection with your own life and experiences. Story number 1. I was born in 1963, April 1st, in Meridian, Mississippi. And as you can imagine, this was a time in our country where injustice, prejudice, and violence against people of color was getting more attention, more press, and people of all walks of life were joining together to work against this unfair treatment. Now, let me make this clear. Racial prejudice was happening all over our country, not just in Mississippi or in the South. But it seemed more obvious in the South. People were more forthright in their displaying of this inequality and violence. And my parents were thrust into that setting in the Deep South in 1958 when they arrived. And it didn't take them too long to realize that there was much work to be done. Much work to work towards justice for the African American community as well as for the Choctaw Indian community. They were in Mississippi under the Mennonite Church as voluntary service organizers. When I was 5 in Mississippi, I didn't go to kindergarten, but I did go to Head Start. And this was a program designed to help children from low-income families to help give them support during the early years of their growth. My mother was a teacher and my father was on the board of the Head Start program, and so my mom taught at the program and I was a student there. She was the only white teacher in the program and I was the only white child in the school. I was also very shy at that age, and I remember at first really feeling out of place. I would stand outside at recess and watch others play, watch them go up and down the slide, swing on the swings, but I was never sure if I could join in or if I had the courage to. I have very vivid memories of this. And eventually I remember my teachers supporting me and encouraging me, helping me feel braver in joining in. And I soon found friends, and this setting soon became the norm for me, and it became my school home. And as I think back, it was good for me to understand what it feels like to appear not to fit in, to have to navigate a new situation. It certainly made a huge impression on me. It was a good experience for me. Story number 2. Our family moved to Oklahoma when I was starting 6th grade, and I went to a local middle school there where all the neighborhood students went. We were Mennonite, and so there was no Mennonite church in Norman, Oklahoma, where we lived, so we traveled to Oklahoma City each Sunday morning to worship in a Mennonite Presbyterian church. Let me explain. In Oklahoma City during that time, there was a Presbyterian pastor, Pastor DeFriend, and a Mennonite pastor, Pastor Smucker, and they learned to know each other. One congregation was mostly African American, and the other was mostly white. They decided that they would like to merge their congregations. They believed that they could learn from each other, and so they joined together, and we became a part of this church. It was actually where I was baptized. And I remember being in school talking with my classmates about church or where we went to church. But students in my middle school didn't know what the word Mennonite meant. So if I was asked what denomination was, I was really hesitant to say it because I knew they'd say, "What's that?" But this was the church that I belonged to, and it was my home. And this church was helping me understand a new idea of what church could be. I was learning how to navigate in a culture that was different. There were new complexities to understand: African American, white, Presbyterian, Mennonite, people from the city, people from more rural areas, and so on. But this experience was very good for me. And finally, my third story. This happened within the last several years, and it happened in Harrisonburg. It was Christmas time, and I was making my normal stop to Food Lion after I left school. I walked up and down the aisles filling my list, and then I got to the cash register, and a man, probably a little older than me, turned to the clerk and said, "I'm paying for this woman's groceries." I was stunned. Did I hear correctly? He was paying for my groceries? I was speechless, and finally I managed to say, "Thank you." He said, "Merry Christmas," and then he was on his way. I continued to stare, and then I finally asked the clerk, "Does this happen often in the store?" She said, "More often than you think." I took my groceries and put them in my car, still in shock. This man didn't know me, hadn't even had a conversation with me, and yet he chose to pay for my groceries. He chose to give me a gift with no strings attached. It was confusing, strange, and humbling at the same time, and I had to figure out what I was going to do with this experience. Since then, I've decided I really want to pass this gift along to someone in the same way, but I have to admit I've failed so far. Who would I choose? How will they react? Would they be suspicious of me? Or will they be offended? Perhaps I've overanalyzed too much and should just take a chance. Perhaps I will soon. This experience was good for me. Today is Maundy Thursday. Tomorrow's Good Friday, and then Easter Sunday. And in many ways, this time of year is one of contemplation for me. What could I be doing better to help others feel a sense of belonging or feel God's presence? And I've been thinking about Ash Wednesday, about a month ago when we began the season of Lent. And I've looked at this cloth that we were given by Pastor Niss, the reminder of our mortality and of how fragile life is, and the rough places in our paths these days. I also remember these candles that you wrote on, where you expressed your lament. And I'm wondering what you're thinking about now, and how this month has been for you. Just because Easter is celebrated on Sunday doesn't mean that the pain goes away, and it doesn't mean we will always fit in or that suddenly things will be easy. But Easter does mean that there is hope, and that there is newness and renewal through Jesus. Resurrection means there is a new beginning, a miraculous sign that God is still here and is alive. Jesus is the gift to us from God, no strings attached. In Romans 12, Paul writes, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Another version says this: "Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out." May we find renewed spirits as we enter this first Sunday of Easter. And may we keep telling our stories and listening carefully to each other. Thank you, and have a great day.